I was showing off my strength yesterday by shoveling mountains of snow. We got like 6 inches on Sunday night into Monday, and I'm rehabbing my back, and so I was just like, "Ah, dang it."
Yeah, that sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah. Fortunately, I like this is like the 5th or 6th time shoveling this year, so I like have a system now. It's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
I also bought like a brush scraper thing for my car, and dude, I had like a little handheld scraper before. What's up, Fremon? Thanks for
Mm-hmm.
being first. I had this little scraper thing before. Fremon, don't you mean yo? But it was just like one scraper. And I tried to like wipe off the have you ever shoveled snow?
Well, no, I've only like scraped off my windshield.
Oh man, that exploded. Okay.
That's what she
But
said.
yikes.
I know. We're just bringing back some The Office 90s humor.
I mean, that's funny that's a what is the original That's What She Said, because it got popularized with I mean, you're older than me, but not that much older than me.
Yeah.
My That's What She Said core memory is from The Office.
Same.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure it predates it, but yeah, my version in my head is Michael Scott saying That's What She Said at an appropriate time.
Yeah. Well, so that's not the 90s then. That's the mid 2000s.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's been that long.
Oh, I forgot to hit the cast. But so I got this new scraper thing, and I'm in full dad mode where I'm so happy I got this brush for my car, because it's like
I'm surprised you didn't have it earlier. You live in freaking snowy part of the country.
Yeah, but when we lived in the city, the car was in a garage, so I didn't need to scrape it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so now I need to. Do you know what a carport is?
Is it the tent thing for the car?
No, I mean it's not a tent. It's like a hard structure. But it's not like a garage is, you pull into it. A carport, I think, is kind of more of a southern thing, where you like just kind of have a roof, but it doesn't necessarily have like the sides. It's not like enclosed. And so I know those exist in other places. I just don't know if they're called carports in other places. But I might like get a carport, because we don't have like a space for garage, but it would be so nice to not have to shovel half of the driveway.
I'm kind of surprised that you don't have like a snowblower. I mean, that's the ultimate
$500.
Yeah.
And we're renting the house. Why would I buy that kind of, because if we like move to an apartment back next time or whatever, it's I don't know, it just didn't seem like a prudent purchase. Especially because of global warming, whether you believe in it or not. Like, it hasn't really snowed that much in the past 4 years. There's been like, we had one blizzard when we lived in the city, and then now last year we had maybe like 1 or 2 snows total. And so now this year I've gotten some use out of the shovel and
but dad toys are not about practicality. Like, do you think it's practical to have a lawnmower that you double as a go-kart?
Wait, who doubles lawnmowers as go-karts? I'm coming back.
Like those like super heavy dude, like the stereotypical American lawnmower that you ride on. Like, I don't think that's a necessity. Yeah.
I mean, if you got a big property, that gets to become a necessity pretty fast.
Oh, fine.
Like again, in the South, like the equivalent of a northern, like $1 million, $2 million home, which is like a reasonable family home. Like, you can get an estate, in Georgia. Like, you can get acres and
I look at those on Zillow sometimes.
Yeah, and so it's like one of those things.
For some reason, Stone Mountain, Georgia has a lot of mansions that you can gawk at.
That's the perks.
I've been told that people of my type shouldn't live there, though.
I mean, like, there are definitely parts of Georgia where you wouldn't feel like you'd fit in, but there's plenty of parts of Georgia where it's like it's not like it's not like sundown towns where you like can't be there. It's just like, hey, this is just a different culture. And no, there's probably, I mean, actually, there's probably now sushi and shit there, because
a
that like
sign of civilization.
but but there's not like, there's not, well, there's not the cultural support that you'd find in like the Bay Area or New York or whatever. But like, it's, especially if you don't feel the need to be like super tied into a bunch of the community, like, which some people are naturally more like that. Like, I think moving out to like where, our friend in Kansas is, or in Georgia, or all those places, the math makes a lot of sense. And you're not far enough, like you're close enough to places like Atlanta where you're not like in the boonies. And so, like, actually, if you ever seriously are thinking about like that, I know we talked about other places that you're gonna move, but like if anyone in the chat sees that, just like DM me, because there's a lot of good options. I'm tempted sometimes to go out there and just, because I just want space. You know what I mean? I like being in the north, but there's nothing particularly about it that I love. And the math
you're
is
saying that
not
we're
great.
starting an OK Banger
Compound, yes.
I was trying not to say compound.
No, we actually, chat, we were talking about this. We think the natural evolution of OK Banger is us running a militia one day. So
right.
Mostly
so
a joke.
we've decided that the name is OK Brigade. Is that what
No,
it
it's
was?
the Banger Brigade.
Banger Brigade. All right.
No, that's
yes. Like, luckily, we do have some military expertise available. And
oh yeah,
we can
we'll
find
have
a large
claymores
property
around the perimeter.
Exactly.
We'll definitely.
But yeah.
I mean, we might need an insurrection soon. But anyway, strength.
We decided we would not touch that topic because it puts some of us in a bad mood. But yeah,
no, Zach,
so
don't run
I
away.
do have Singapore.
The militia is a joke. Unless you want to join, then maybe it's not. But no, the how's Singapore?
Yeah, thanks for joining us from the YouTube side, Zach. I saw that you had an RSVP from LinkedIn or something, so that was pretty neat. Singapore is a balmy 76 degrees right now.
That's nice. I think it's 18
which is actually
here.
Pretty nice. It's very cool, considering the normal weather here is like closer to 100. But yeah, it is currently midnight, as you can see from the outside. But yeah, I mean, it's. I was hanging out with a friend who's lived here for a little bit, and then we were commenting that, man, this really is like pure like distilled mall culture. Like,
what do you mean?
It's just one mall connected to another mall connected to another mall.
Oh, Singapore? Interesting.
Yeah. Because like she was saying how her daughter was reading a book about like picking mushrooms or something.
Okay.
And we were like, where would you even do that in Singapore? Like there's no such thing as like true outdoors. Like, even the outdoors that you get, it's like artificial outdoors. It's like man-made beaches and like man-made forests. Like, you can theoretically go into a real rainforest, but people don't do that.
I mean,
it's a country and a city, yeah.
I mean, it is a city-sized country. And so I think you could say the same about most, at least American cities. I can't talk about other country cities other than the ones that I've been to. But like, where are you gonna go? Like mushroom picking in Boston? You got to leave Boston to go to it. And I guess like, what surrounds Singapore again?
Malaysia.
Yeah, like I bet in Malaysia you can go pick some mushrooms.
Yeah, you can. You might not make it back, but yeah.
Well, I mean, that's not geography's fault.
I mean, at least for like, yeah, the average person. And I'm sure there's many skilled people who are able to navigate. But Malaysia is like, it kind of like Singapore in that it's also malls connected to malls for the most part. But then, like, yes, you can theoretically drive out to more of the rural countryside kind of places, if they're not deforested.
Interesting. Toronto's like that too. Did you know Toronto is like connected underground? All like the downtown is.
Oh, I didn't get a chance to go underground very much when I was there.
Well, it's sneaky. They don't like advertise it. You have to go into the normal buildings and like in the lobbies of a normal building, like an office building or whatever, they'll have an escalator that goes down, and
Mm-hmm.
it like, and you'll go down and you're like, there's a whole subterranean mall system under here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was shocked, because I was trying to meet up at like a coffee place, and then I went and I couldn't find the coffee shop, and I was just like, I've walked this block 3 times. I feel insane. And then I saw like this random escalator in a lobby that goes down. I'm like, wait, I think I heard something about this. And then I go down, and then I find basically the back rooms of Toronto.
Oh, sweet. Well,
John,
and
you're
I see
flying
that
to Malaysia?
John, we're going to be closer and closer.
You got a high five.
But yeah. So
Christian.
we're going to talk about strengths today.
I was going to ask what you meant by that, because I said yes, and then I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, I don't know what you mean.
I think that's true for most OK Banger topics. What kind of proposal?
I bring some up sometimes.
No, actually, when you bring some up too, I'm also like, what? Like, what do you mean? This single word that apparently is imbued with all sorts of meanings. So the backstory is that I've been throwing you my newest ideas, right?
Yes.
For what I want to build. And like, this is where I'm like, in 2025, I'm slightly wiser. I think before, when I was younger, even by a few months, I would approach it as like, Cameron, I want to make this. Is this a great idea or not? And now I realize that's a really silly question to ask someone, especially if they're your friend and not, not exactly your target customer yet or something like that. Because the answer is like, who the F knows? Yeah.
I don't know, try it.
Exactly. But instead, I realized that, wait, like in the past, if I had continuously worked on something, then that would generate the second level insight you would need as a founder. Because oftentimes, like our initial idea, it's kind of like, well, it's based on some insight, but like the point of making these products is to get deeper into the second layer. It's kind of like digging, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I saw that where I had like fits of starts and stop is when I would go into this corner of like, oh no, I suck at this, and then I would drop the idea or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see that on other people too. Like when some of my friends, I'm like, oh, if you work a little more on this and get through the suck, then you would find the actual level of insight.
Yeah.
So like now my friends and we talk about like what is like flywheels and distribution mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
But we realize that, oh, the actual thing, especially in the beginning, where you don't even know what you want to distribute, is like founder flow. It's like, what is the thing that keeps you going as a founder, where you don't get like stuck into these like corners of sadness and procrastination, where that prevents you from generating further insight.
Okay, a lot of ideas in that. Can I try to extract the 3 that I think are important, most important?
Yes.
All right. So the first one is something that we talk about a lot, which is like, the thing that you can do the longest is probably the thing you're going to ultimately be the best at. Like that's just a really important thing to think about. Like you can do most people I think can do anything for 6 months. But when you combine it with the second thing, which you pointed out, which I like, so I like to think about the second level insight thing that you mentioned as being, everything obvious has already been thought of. There's a lot of people doing a lot of thinking in a lot of places with a lot of different perspectives, and anything in the world that you come across and you're like, oh, I've thought of something new, odds are it's probably not new, not because you're dumb, but because other people are smart too. And so like the one mega exception to this is when there is like a truly brand new like industry or field, right? Before before YouTube existed, everybody who put out a YouTube video was inventing a new type of content because it wasn't a thing that existed before. Same thing with like the big tech platforms. Arguably the 2000s, a lot of the things that were built there were like truly net new because the internet wasn't a thing beforehand. And so you can have new ideas in these new spaces by virtue of being early. But if a space is anything but early, it's really, really hard to have a truly unique idea in it off the cuff. It
And it's not
happens,
only
but it's
early,
rare.
it's the fact that these deep tech-ish sort of ideas are often like deeply funded or like, government funded or something like that. And I
Yeah,
think
there.
as like a solopreneur, entrepreneur type, until you have the money to build a team, you actually can't even like touch a lot of these like obvious big ideas because you don't have enough of the capital and enough of the manpower to make it happen anyway.
So yes and no. So that's like that is true today. In
Mhm.
2003, it was a lot less true. Like the
Mm.
YouTube team didn't need
Mhm.
VC funding to start hosting videos online. They just did. And then they
Mm.
needed
Mhm.
money to start paying for the server costs because they ramped up way faster than they thought. And so like in some truly new spaces with certain characteristics, you can be like two people in a garage and like make a new thing. I mean, that was
Mhm.
like, Steve Jobs and Wozniak were making computers in a garage because that was how you could make computers back then. You can't really do that now. Not without a bunch of expertise and equipment. But anyway, so like those two ideas together where what you can do the longest is what you're going to end up being the best at, and there are no obvious ideas generally left in like new spaces,
Mhm.
means that in order to get to the spot where you have like really interesting non-obvious insights into a space, it typically means like you need to be familiar with it and like good at it and have worked at it for a while.
Mhm.
I forgot what the third
Well,
idea was. There's more good ideas.
the garage founder thing is a little bit of a myth mixing with truth, though, right? Because
Yeah,
in those such situation, Steve Jobs' like family lived near the HP founder, and then like he had access to a lot of like equipment and stuff like that from when he
yeah,
was young. So I think
yeah.
which is part of strength, right? It's like what is your inventory of your true access to resources that other people don't have.
Yeah, I will defend like the myth of it a little bit. If you
Mhm.
look at uh it's HP, not HP. What was the cheap computers? It's not Intel, that's a processor. Oh man.
Xerox?
No. That's like a big funded lab. Anyway, what Dell.
Mm.
The Dell guy, he started while he was at college in his apartment, and he would just resell computers because he realized that he could do a little bit of upgrading on a stock computer, like double its memory, and then
Oh.
charge a bunch of and he wasn't even technical, really.
Mhm.
Compaq. I think Zach is right with Compaq.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Didn't know that.
but yeah, and then there's also a really fascinating financial model
Mhm.
with Dell or Compaq or one of those where their receivables have a shorter timeline than their payables, and so
Mm.
they're like previously. I don't think it's this way anymore, but they would actually get more cash flow coming in than what was going out based on the timing, and so
Mhm.
they had like a positive cash conversion cycle, which is like really hard to do in any business. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
Right, isn't it so interesting? It's always some, like, really interesting, bizarre business mechanic thing that some people can take advantage of. But, like,
yeah,
you and I, we wanted to talk about other people first, right? It's like,
yes,
before we talk about each other, like, you and I both, like, coached other people in this way, like,
no.
yours in the military leadership context and mine in the entrepreneurship coaching context.
Yeah. So I was a member of cadre at my college because the cadets run the training program for the freshmen, and so
Mhm.
I went through it my first year. Was a corporal, which is kind of like low ranking at a squad of cadets I was in charge of. Then I was a first sergeant, so I was like the in charge of counting and accountability for about 50 cadets. And then my senior year, I ran the freshman training program. And then in the military, you do counseling with each soldier in terms of like, hey, your perform. It's like basically pips for people in tech, but they're regular counseling sessions where you're like, hey, you're doing this well, you're not doing this well. And so I did that throughout my time. And then I finished up as an instructor at the Army's Officer Candidate School. So I have thought about how to communicate people's strengths and weaknesses to them a lot.
Mhm. So what is, like, your prototypical cadet person coming in?
What is my
Is there like
prototypical
certain
person
like
that comes in?
yeah, is there certain archetypes of like, this type of person tends to perceive themselves this way?
So I would say there's different buckets of people.
Mhm.
Um, obviously everyone's a unique flower or whatever, but like people that have similar life paths tend to have similar worldviews, and that includes their
Mhm.
view about themselves. And so like there is a kind of person that either grew up from more like humble roots and they kind of had to do everything by themselves, or maybe they're like a linchpin in their community, or they take care of their family
Mhm.
or whatever. Like there's a
Mhm.
type of person that has a very high internal locus of control, that like they might not always like what is being said to them about themselves, but they haven't had the luxury of pretending like the world didn't exist or didn't exist the way that it was treating them. And I always found those people to be much more productive to have like a session with, because like
Mhm.
if you said if you had something to point to it, like you can't just be like, hey, I don't like your face, because then they're like, okay, screw you, because they've had people that have told them they don't like their face before. But if you're like, hey, this was the standard, you failed to meet the standard here, these are the reasons why I think you didn't meet this standard in this situation, 9 times out of 10 they're like, dang it, you're right, thank you. And then like they go and they try to do it better. Now there's like
So
a
they're like
different arc.
coachable.
Yeah, they're very coachable because they have to be, because they haven't had anything else to fall back on.
Mhm.
And there's versions of that type of person that came from means too. Usually they're people, frankly, they're people that played like sports. I think people that have done athletics before, especially group athletics, are
Mhm.
forced to reckon with the fact that they're not always going to be the center of the universe, and that kind of humility of getting slide tackled in a soccer game, or like getting actual tackled in a football game or whatever. It's 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 all these little different microcosms of like getting punched in the face. um and as you know, I'm an advocate for everybody to getting punched in their face at least once in their life, ideally in a circumstance where they're not going to die. but the but the point is, like, some
That's what's gonna
people,
happen in the compound. It's gonna be
yeah,
face punching training.
face punching. That's step. I mean, you seen Fight Club? You got to stay outside the door. That's like a version of getting punched in the face. No, the point is, until you realize that other people get a vote in your life, whether you like it or not, it's very hard to be coachable, or at least that's what I've seen.
Mhm. So what is like a typical feedback you give to someone that's not like, "I don't like your face," that you can actually train on?
So I think the biggest one, how would I phrase it?
Or actually,
I,
so before that, do you tell people like what they're doing well? It sounds like you definitely tell them how to correct themselves, but do you tell them you're good at this and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that."
Yeah, so it depends on the level of emotional maturity that they have. If somebody I can tell is very, like, if they're mission oriented, if they're like, hey, I
Mhm.
want to do this thing really, really well, and the
Mhm.
self is not an obstacle to me doing that
Mhm.
thing, like basically if they have the humility to accept, like, hey, these are the facts, then I typically start with, hey, these are the things that you screwed up. This is what you did well, or like what you screwed up, how to get better. This is what you did well. I typically try to end on what you did well, unless they're really jacked
Mhm.
up, and then I like make sure to leave on that moment, and then I plan on giving them an attaboy, attagirl later,
Mhm.
because some people have never sat in the fact that they aren't succeeding.
Mm.
They will, like, people are phenomenal at telling themselves any story in the world so that they can justify that they didn't really screw up what just happened. And in the military, like, you do need to feel the pain and misery of your screw up, because if you screw up, other people can die. And
Mhm.
so not everything you shouldn't, like, I don't, it's not useful to break somebody down all the time, but there are certain schools and parts of schools where the point is to fail.
Mhm.
In fact, it's kind of an open secret that at the National Training Center, at the Joint JRTC, I don't even know what the acronym stands for. Before a unit like a battalion or brigade deploys, they have to go certify in kind of like a mock deployment scenario. In those mock deployment scenarios, the battalion commanders and the brigade commanders, they almost always lose because they need to know what it feels like to lose.
So it's like a Kobayashi Maru.
I think I know the reference, and I think yes.
I can't. This is so funny. So I was actually planning to impress you with that reference, but you're like, maybe you don't know it. My impression for those in the chat who may actually know better than me, because I actually did not watch the entire series, is a Star Trek thing, right? Where it's
yes,
like a
exactly.
no-win
Yes,
scenario.
it's
kind
exactly
of thing?
that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my attempt to be nerdy cool, and it kind of like totally flopped.
No, you nailed it. Except my brain went to like, is this a Cowboy Bebop reference that I'm missing right now?
Oh my gosh.
no, it's 100% Kobayashi Maru. And it also makes sense. It's not like destined to fail, but there are units that their entire job is to be the bad guys, to be the Op 4 out in the desert of Fort Irwin or Fort Polk, Louisiana. And so they know the terrain. They know all of the sneaky routes. They know everything. And so you go and you can study all you want, but unless you're also there, like living in the mountains like they do half the time, because they're also doing this deployment like once a month, like every month for a year and a half. And so they're like experts in this area. Zach, you're 100% right that face punching is physical until it becomes spiritual. Get the right punch to the face, it's immediately spiritual. Nothing like getting your bell rung. But yeah, so like the Kobayashi Maru energy is really, really important, especially for higher ranking officers that like have been the big man on campus for a long time. Like they need to fail. It's really important to have that bitter taste. But so for let's say, trainees that are trying to become officers, like officer candidates, they need to know when they've completely beefed it and what parts of beefing it are in their control versus not. Because there's like different levels of, hey, this went wrong, but it's not your fault, or like, but the problem is as a platoon leader in at least the Army, you're responsible for everything your organization does or fails to do. And so even if you had the right plan, you gave the right orders, if it goes wrong, it's still on you, which I think is a really important value to cultivate, even though if it's not truly cosmically fair. I forgot your original question. I'm just having fun yapping.
Oh gosh. And thanks for joining us, the real JDEE.
What's up? Yo.
Yeah. So what was my original question? Oh, I was actually gonna make an offhanded comment that, I guess this is a thing, right? In Top Gun, like actually Maverick is kind of messed up, and like the Iceman is actually the good model. But sadly, one is more celebrated.
Yeah, no, there's, especially in like the fighter pilot community, I think there's like a time and a place for that. Like you want I was actually reflecting last night on, do you ever read Rocket? Is it Rocket Boys? Missile Men?
The Right Stuff.
Right Stuff. The Right Stuff. I was saying words from it, not the
actual.
I'm
impressed that I know these references. I'm so impressed by me.
No, you're crushing it. The Right
Stuff.
I
have a sad story about The Right Stuff though.
Do it. Share.
So the reason why I even know this book is I did work for a professor who was like trying to push this book on us. But in retrospect, it's actually really problematic if you think about what the book is really about.
Yeah, no, they're not great dudes. And so that's kind of a thing that I've been reflecting on, is like how much volatility on the interpersonal level do you need to accept to do things that are inherently like space travel is still this way, but a lot less so. Like it was inherently violent, right? It was inherently dangerous. Rockets blew up on the pad with people inside them. Like multiple people died during the Apollo like prep and training missions. Like you need a psycho to do that job because it's an insane thing to do. Can you find well-adjusted Mr. Rogers type psychos? Is the thing I've been reflecting on. Like, what do you think?
I feel like it is kind of like, do you have the dog in you? Like that does seem to be the minimum requirement to survive being a founder because it sucks so much.
Like for anyone that hasn't read the book, the original astronauts were all naval test pilots because that was like the only group of people with the technical skill to participate in this type of like brand new mission. Test pilots die at an outsized rate compared to other pilots because they're testing new aircraft, which break up when they go over the sound barrier. They all had like hot rods that they would drag race in the desert in the middle of the night. They were all alcoholics. They're all womanized. They're all like not good dudes. But some of them became, great dudes in the sense that they like went to space and shit. So it's
right.
That's like the context for this conversation.
Yeah, and I would say that Mr. Rogers does have the dog in him, right? Because like he had to fight to get the PBS money from Congress, and it wasn't that easy to do what he did back in the day either. And he was
old boy was a Navy SEAL, right?
Was he?
I'm pretty sure Mr. Rogers was a Navy SEAL. Let me look that up.
I did not know that.
But keep talking.
Oh. Well, yeah, or like Bob Ross was actually a drill sergeant, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I feel like, being nice and like being dogged they're like different spectrum altogether. They're not on the same spectrum.
All right.
And hi Frank, thanks for joining us.
Okay, so urban legend was that he was in Vietnam. He was not a Navy SEAL according to the first search result. But let me see if he was in the military, because I hope I didn't make this up fully. No.
You were trying to claim him.
I was trying to claim him because I wanted to claim him. All right. I don't see any military thing here. Either way, good dude. I think he had the dog in him for sure.
Yeah. So when I was coaching others, I find that it's often the case where people are not self-aware about their strengths, and also they tend to either deny their weaknesses or they take it to be an unfixable thing, or like there's no redeeming quality to their weakness, and not seeing it as like, well, this like weakness exists because you have this strength and they come in a pair.
Yeah.
So therefore you need to figure out what's the pairing strength for this weakness so that you can succeed.
So saying that back to you, you found that ineffective people either don't like to accept that they have weaknesses, or they don't appropriately adjust their actions based off of those weaknesses, and the idea that you would adjust based off of like doubling down on a strength or something like that, right?
Correct. And I wouldn't call them ineffective people. I think that sounds a little judgmental. Like people who feel stuck, usually. Or like they get caught in a pattern where they can't break through to that next level. Like there is some repeating thing they're doing that I'm doing, and you can see it.
Can I ask you about the ineffective people thing? Because like that feels like the least judgmental thing that I think
you've ever said.
Also, what's up, Marianne? Because like if I say bad person or shitty person or loser, or like that's what my mind goes to, is like, hey, that's a judgmental statement. Effective versus ineffective is an objective analysis of your actions.
Because it sounds very like broad spectrum, like you're ineffective at everything, but they're often like ineffective at a particular thing that you want to be effective at.
Sure.
So that shorthand, I feel like makes people feel like, oh, like like a loser.
I guess my asterisk on ineffective would be fixing my camera.
Like the camera.
Yeah, no, my camera is extremely ineffective right now. But
Freeman said, I prefer you call me a bad person than an ineffective person. Exactly. So I didn't want to say this, but I feel like there is this sense of moral fault for being ineffective in a lot of cultures.
Well, yeah. So I was about to say that's optimizer brain. Like if you are truly like grounded, I think using the most accurate word to describe your situation. Okay, so let me attempt to describe the asterisk on ineffective. because like
Mhm.
I like words have meaning, and I think the meaning needs to be very precise so that you can communicate effectively. This is a common theme with our
Yeah.
conversations. Is I
I
ask about
realized I
words a
should bring
lot.
up Freeman's comment just because it's on Twitch, so the
Yeah,
YouTube people are like, "Where are you even getting this from?"
but so when I say ineffective, it
Mhm.
applies to a temporal context. So it's not broad spectrum. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
for the thing that we're analyzing, it's like for that duration. And so for like a trainee, it's like during the training cycle. It's not like, hey, you suck at your entire life. It was like you've been ineffective these past 8 weeks.
Right.
Um,
But this
it
this is getting into us being really technically precise, but like and then you see this table floating online of terms scientists use and how the layperson interprets it. Like
yeah,
when we say something is negative, we meant like positive, negative, whereas an average person would think it means bad. So
sure.
then who's at fault if you use negative excessively, you know?
Depends on the context. If they're a
Yeah.
scientist talking about science, it's the person who's reading its fault. Skill issue. But if it's a scientist who's trying to
So, but
communicate
we're
with a large
on
group
the
of people, it's a
internet
scientist's fault. Yeah.
where everything is snipped out of its context sometimes.
Sure.
So, for example, yeah, like imagine if you had clipped only the ineffective people part, which you might, like, and then now we're missing this whole context of this explaining the whole thing.
Two reactions.
So
One,
therefore, your
yeah.
words have to have the most context within the word, and not assume that the average person knows all these nuances.
I I agree with
Nuance
that.
is dead in
I agree with
2025.
that, but I think you saying a person that feels stuck
Mhm.
is not being more accurate. It's more pandering to the thing that might get people to pay attention to what you're saying, which I'm fine with, but it's also not intellectually honest either.
Kristen called out for intellectual dishonesty.
Eh,
But yeah, so I agree with your definition. That's the definition I think
yep.
of because I know you. And I know that's what you actually meant.
Yeah. Also, I kind of think it's
Mhm.
cool to be like we're doing a long form medium. I like defining
So
words
long.
because if we define what was that
So long.
is so long. The like I think us defining words in this era of okay banger will let our
Mhm.
community have better conversations through the next era. But I don't want to get bogged down on that today. I just think that that is a thing that, you know, we could think about.
Mhm.
Because every good online community has their own vernacular.
Right, right.
Strengths
So
though.
going back to strengths, um, by the way, can you guys hear beeping on your end? I'm not sure whether
No,
my parents are pressing random buttons on the wall
it's
in this
probably
hotel
that one.
room. Yeah. So and I feel like, what I had done in the past to help people is like get them to talk about their strengths and weaknesses. And then
Mhm.
like very much like you, is like give them my feedback of how they perceive themselves and whether it matches how like a third person perceives it. And I feel like that is uh, the wonderful thing about having friends who are doing the same thing as you, right? Because
Mhm.
it's so much easier to spot where the other person is stuck when it's
Yeah.
not you.
Yeah, no, a lot less ego involved there, just other people's ego, which you can break. That's not a problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whatever. So for like for us, for each other, like I think we do that a lot where we try to
Yeah.
help each other with our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I think so too. I wonder, I don't think we've been super explicit about it in a while. The like I think we did it at the beginning and then we've just kind of rolled with it since then. I don't know. What's your
Mhm.
perception?
What do you mean doing the beginning?
Like I feel like before we started doing the show, we were just like, "Hey, I think I'm good at this, this, and this. You're good at this, this, and this." And then we are just like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
generally aligned. Let's roll."
Oh, I meant like not really even within the context of us working together, which we discussed a
Mm.
lot in the last episode. If you would
Yeah,
like to listen to it,
yeah. Go check it out.
but more about like when we're each respectively doing our own thing, and that's where I'm running my ideas by you, and I'm trying to, again, like, reframe my own, like, weaknesses into strengths for myself, for like, with more clarity than before. Because I feel like before I was trying to design my projects whereby I can completely avoid where I see it as like pitfalls and traps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas this time I'm like, okay, like I cannot avoid this forever because it implicates so much of being an entrepreneur. So therefore, I'm going to just tell people to, like you, it's like, this is something I've been secretly really bad at. But let's re-examine like how I got here in the first place and what I was actually trying to do. So one example that I want to share from myself that I list as my top weakness is when I'm talking to someone that I consider as like a mentor or someone that, like, is like, that I really look up to, then I might disappear for a while because I feel like, oh, the next time I talk to you, I want to demonstrate that I've made progress. And therefore, if I didn't make progress and I'm like, in a state of shame and I don't want to talk to that person for a while until I have somehow recovered.
Yeah,
but then
real.
like, one of my friends, like last week that I consider in this role, she was like, but I want to know about the journey. like I'm not sure why you decided that.
Tell him to sub to the show.
Exactly, right? So, and now with a little bit more maturity, I realized that, like, even really successful people go through like ups and downs, and that this is part of the whole story. It's not all like successes all the way, like, so, and it's all like, and it is somewhat entertaining and amusing when I hear my friends like stories of pitfalls that they fall into. So therefore, how can I, like, put some sunlight into these corners, so that I don't continuously fall into this, like, because there's nothing more like trapping, I think, than a sense of like shame and guilt.
Yeah, I mean, the really annoying part of so like one of my, I would say, I don't know, like, it's not a hobby because I don't do it enough to be a hobby, but a thing that I enjoy to do is I like reading biopics, right? Because I like seeing, excuse me, the good and bad of somebody's like arc.
Right. And sorry, can you continue this in a second? Because I need to help my dad get into his wheelchair for a second.
Yeah, 100%. I will pause this and I'll say hey to the chat. What's up,
Yes, please chat with the chat.
How are you doing? Welcome to the show today. Christians in Singapore and also in family hero mode, making sure everything goes well. What are y'all up to today? Y'all doing okay in the chaos of the week? I hope y'all made some money on all the price movements. I certainly did not. I've just been missing every gamble, but that's okay. Maryam, oh, I think I said hey to you before. Prof, Sam, you are shameless, but sometimes I wonder if, I mean, like, we've had some conversations where, like, you deeply care about what you do, and so, like, it's really hard to really care and be fully shameless. It's like, it's a big old ego thing, which Kristen probably can talk about better. But, like, when you really care about something, you want it to be good. You don't want it to just be like a good, and that holds me back a lot of the time. Kristen, we were talking about shame and the ego and making things.
So you were talking about biopics and how you enjoy their arcs.
Yeah, so I like seeing great people fail for the exact reason that you're talking about with, like, these mentors. The also interesting thing that I realized is that I have never really had a mentor that, like, helped me meaningfully for longer than, like, a very brief period of time. I always had what I would say, like, bad role models ahead of me. And, like, and I clocked that they were bad role models, like, pretty quickly. Not to toot my own horn, but I was like, I would like fall under the spell for a second, and then I'd be like, oh no, this doesn't compute with what I think makes like the most sense for these paths. And so, but I was still, under their tutelage, and so I had to like, thank you so much for teaching me. Throw that out of my brain. And so, like, I have always had that or nothing in my like adult life, which was like a really interesting realization. Role models, I think, are pretty important, and it's not fun to not have them. What were we talking about?
But it's also really, like, you're right. It's like, I have also learned with some maturity to no longer put anyone on a pedestal because it has gone wrong in so many ways. Yes, everyone is just human. Yeah, I think that's been the most helpful thing to realize. Like, even the ones that you admire, like, you don't want to perfectly replicate their paths because they always come with a lot of downsides.
Probably a dickhead. They're not probably, but they can't. They were definitely a dirtbag at some point in their life, and you don't want to emulate that part of it. Or maybe you do. I don't know your life. Oh, this is what I was going to say. All right, I lost it again. Keep going.
Okay. So, and I think what's also changed for me is like, the other secret shame and guilt thing is like, I always feel self-conscious when I tell my friends what I'm up to because it changes so much week to week. Oh, sorry, I have to go again really quick to care about that stuff.
All right, I'm gonna give wisdom to the chat.
Thank you all, chat. This is the real life.
Real going. Prof, getting stuck in the perfectionism is super real. So the thing that I've been trying to remember, the frustrating thing is that the people that did a great thing at some point and like you saw their journey and you saw their their ups and downs, like a lot of those people, especially in the past, weren't really that introspective or reflective, or even like they weren't even clocking that they were on a path sometimes. Like, we live in a really, really interesting part of history where we're forced to confront an image of ourselves in ways that previous generations didn't really have to do. Like, I'm staring at a camera lens right now. My face is on the screen right there. Most people throughout history didn't have to do that. They saw themselves in the mirror every once in a while and they just like lived their life. They didn't think about living their life. They like left curved the crap out of all of it. And so it's great to be introspective in some circumstances. It's great to be like, oh, let me see how I can do this better. I think most of us have like a neurotic tendency of hyper obsession with us doing things well, so much that like we don't really understand that most of the people that did things well in history in our eyes didn't think about doing them that well. They just did things. I was talking about like camera lenses and how us looking at our screen right now makes us hyper introspective and reflective, which is not how most people that have done really cool things really probably live their life.
They just did the thing.
They just did the
luxury
thing.
Of just doing the thing.
They just did the thing, and reality told them, hey, this part of it sucked, fix it. And they said, okay. And they didn't freak out about it. And that's like the version of life that I'm trying to embody more this year, which like, this was the whole thing of like, it's not.
So introspect less for 2025.
It's just as long as you do more.
Which is what we brought up with multiple episodes, right? Like if you think you're introspecting too much, what was the saying that you had?
If you're worried about how much you're reflecting, you probably need to reflect less.
Too much.
If you haven't really thought about reflecting, probably introduce some reflection into your life.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about Marcus Aurelius? Didn't he write an entire book called Meditations that is really about him introspecting?
Yeah, that's one dude. That's one dude out of all of the rest of it. And frankly, he's like overrepresented because he was the only one that wrote shit down. The rest of Rome was built by a bunch of people that were not doing that.
Okay. But it talks to the importance of documentation because future generations will read it and you'll be hyper represented.
I mean, arguably, no one's going to read the only thing that lasts through the internet era is an infinitesimally small amount of information of an ever growing like pie of info. And there's more people to read more stuff, but like Marcus Aurelius, I don't know, maybe he wrote the best meditations of that era, but maybe he didn't. Maybe the best ones like were written and then they just like got left on a shelf somewhere. I don't know. The thing that I'm trying to take away or trying to communicate with that is we have no idea if it was the best. We think what we might have been, and it's pretty good. I think it's worth a read to at least like consume and reflect on. But even if it was the best, it doesn't really matter. Like, because if he just wrote it and he was miserable the whole time, like, what was the point? Because he's just like sneak made a bunch of people miserable today. I mean, but maybe help people. I don't know.
Well, that's Kafka type stuff, but yeah.
I'm working through Kafka's like journal entries. It's honestly, unironically, really helpful.
Okay, tell me more about that. So,
dude was
oh yeah, you
have
because that's what you have been posting it, right?
Yeah, periodically I'll post a good one, but like he was. So just
how does reading a mopey bad time guy help with your life?
Because it makes me feel not insane for feeling mopey bad time. Because like like I was I'm not saying I'm sitting in it more. Like so I was like a really angsty teenager. I very much was against the world broadly. I was like very frustrated that I grew up in podunk suburban Georgia town, and all I wanted to do was get away. And it was like an emo kid, that whole energy. As an adult, looking back, I've still had a lot of those like feelings and emotions and like sentiments over the past like decade and a half since I was that like angsty kid. I just like either didn't let myself feel it for a period of time, and like sometimes you have to do that. I know that might annoy some people, but I do really think compartmentalizing is a survival mechanism that is like crucial in certain circumstances. And then when you have the freedom to kind of sit with the things that you're feeling, it's usually a good idea to do that. Because even when you compartmentalize, it doesn't make them go away. It just like makes them not the focus for a period of time, which you can sustain you can sustain until you can't. And then, you punch a hole in the wall or whatever, casual. But so I'm at a time where I can kind of sit with more of these emotions. I'm trying to reflect on kind of the version I want to be over the next like decade or two. And it is an emotionally like intelligent, this is also a control thing, but like in command of my like faculties and able to process things as I feel them and not derail the other things that I know that I want to do as a result of them, but also not shove them down and never like process them too. Cause like not processing feelings doesn't mean that they're gone. It just means that you don't have to deal with them in this moment.
Well, I feel very torn because like the reason why I'm trying to like pre-process it, it's almost like the Buster Keaton like movie, the black and white one, where he's trying to move all the wooden blocks out out of the way of the train tracks. Like, that's what I'm trying to do actually. That's why I keep bringing up these. Because I'm like, okay, like this is where Kristen has like fallen into like perfectionism before. Okay, let's like shove that log out of the way by realizing, like don't fall into this trap again because blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to like do a little bit of self-reflection that's a more action promoting.
I mean,
because of course you can also introspect and get into this introspection spiral, and then we'll never get out.
I mean, Kristen, we're riding the same pendulum. We just had ours swing the opposite way, and now we're trying to be in roughly the same point, just coming from different sides.
And so, I suppose so.
Which like we haven't talked about, but that's really funny. That is pretty much what we're doing.
Yeah, I think we're trying to meet each other in the middle. But okay, but the thing with Kafka is that we wouldn't even know about him if his friend wasn't like super into promoting his manuscripts, right? And there's like so many of these great artists, like I think Van Gogh as well. It was not because of his sister-in-law or someone like that, or his brother, like he wouldn't be famous because you needed someone to posthumously hype you,
Yeah.
or else nobody would know who you are.
Yeah. Well,
Hamilton.
is that a celebration of teamwork or an indictment of the individual?
Well, I was thinking something more practical, like please do hype yourself before you die.
Yeah.
Because you may not have someone to hype you after.
Well, I mean, so that's the thing, is like we're talking about strengths, and you know, maybe we do an inventory of our strengths, maybe we don't, but like there are some people whose strength is being that communicator, is talking to people. That, you know, there's people that go into a room and they leave with a new friend every room that they go into. That's incredible. That's like a really, in my opinion, like a very powerful skill that also is completely useless in certain domains, right? And so,
well, I don't know. I think that's a pretty dang good superpower.
I mean, if your job is to ship code and all you're doing is trying to make friends.
Okay, yeah.
You know
you can't well, I don't know. I feel like nowadays you can probably get with being 100% yapper and 0% operator.
I mean, well, so that's the thing. Like you can build a successful life without shoring up your weaknesses if you pick up the right path, or if you choose a path, or you learn a path that is suited to you. And so like all the things that we're talking about with like strengths and weaknesses, blah, 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 it depends on the context in which you're living your life. And so,
right. But don't you think being a founder is actually the trickiest one? Because if you're not specialized, therefore it actually exposes more weaknesses, because it's almost like you have to be somewhat good at everything.
Yes. And so being a founder, being a solopreneur, being like whatever you want to call it, it is a, like you say, expose. I kind of think of it as like there's nobody else to do the work. And so, you know, you say a project is 100%, you know, 10% is like writing code, 30% is distribution, 20% is raising, whatever math you do. There's only a certain amount of people. If it's just you, there's only one person to do all of those things. And so like the thing, or like the way that you operate that lets you be the best at what you do in skill X is not going to carry over to the other thing, because taking out the trash isn't the same. Like the quantity, or like the timbre of that work is not the same as the other thing that you're a master at. And so it's really a game of, I've found, you know, and take it with a grain of salt, I've had some success, I've had a lot of failure, but like it's a game of suppressing your like instinct to do a thing to a standard that you want at the right moment. And some moments you really do need to have like, you know, tip top, you know, like performance. Other moments you just need to take out the trash or clear the emails or whatever. And if you can't suppress that inner perfectionist, as Prof was pointing out, but really it's like your inner crafts person. Like if you can't suppress that inner crafts person at the right time, you are going to be in a lot of misery, because every day you're going to feel like you didn't do enough, speaking from experience.
Right. And even as I'm thinking about, like I'm already in my first perfectionist loop, I need to perfect the loop and not the craft at this point, because I need to get the system of the reps, right? Because I'm not going to get better with one iteration for sure. And I feel like the founders I admire, like Sam, right? It's like, you know, they ship consistently regardless of how they feel about their product.
Yeah.
Which is usually really, really great. And, you know, of course, they have really high standards.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like a beautiful thing. It's
and in
like
a way that this show allows us to do that, because we have to show up.
Yeah, we got to show up. We got to be honest. Like, oh, okay, yesterday went well, the day before did not. Here's why we think that. And, you know, I certainly don't think I'm juggling the way that I want to be juggling. But I'm definitely juggling better than I was a few months ago.
Right. So before we end the show, I want to shout out like the various projects / new streams that we're doing. Yeah. So we have the pdfproject.org. Sorry, pdfproject.org. Where where you are curating, with the help of anybody in the world, the best PDFs on the internet.
Yeah, I love PDFs. Everything fun I've ever read on the internet probably came in the form of a PDF. There's a bunch of textbook rip sites. There's a bunch of weird anime like rip sites. There's not like a, hey, this is like a research paper that was like really culturally significant in 1982 and it like was important, but no one has like highlighted it as such. And so I'm collecting all those for that project. It's for the love of the game.
Yes. And then also, speaking of strengths and weaknesses, there's your gaming stream where you are going from noobish to being ranked at the finals.
Yeah, I want to be a top the finals player. Yeah, FPS game, very arcadey, it's like Team Fortress 2 energy. If anybody knows that, I'm having a blast. Basically getting absolutely wrecked in an FPS. Trying to stream twice a week, putting up like YouTube videos a couple times a week as well. Check it out. Cameron Builds is the handle on both. I think it's I couldn't get the same handle on both of those, but I'm trying to get them to match. So Cameron Builds on YouTube.
Yes, it's also on Twitch with a Z.
With a Z on YouTube, Z on Twitch, S on YouTube. We'll fix that. And then
yes, and then I'm going to be live streaming my building in public process. So
amazing.
Yes. So I think like I'm at a place where I'm really excited to help build luxury products for those who are caretaking health for themselves and others. So
yeah.
And I feel like this has been like actually the corner of shame I've been in for quite a long time, which is the fact that like even as I was, I might have to get up and help my dad again getting out of the toilet, but then it's sort of like I've lived in this environment growing up where my dad's been really sick, and like my brother like is also like kind of dicey even though he looks super healthy, and it's sort of like I'm constantly put in a position where I am trying to investigate healthcare situations, and and it's for most of us, it's a pretty helpless situation, right? When you have aging parents, like there's so much that we all don't talk about as a generation, where health span is like lifespan is increasing, but health span is not keeping up in the same rate. So I feel like, if I can help my friend, Lewis with his mom situation feel as good as him getting his new Apple product for the first time, then at least that like helps people feel better about themselves. And I feel like for me as a chaplain, like this is a new way I want to like productize the spiritual care by helping them in a practical way to navigate the healthcare system, to make the whole situation feel better with community.
Is it fair to say that you're building high quality support tools for caregivers?
Yes.
Amazing. That's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for summarizing.
That need that. Talk about strengths. I like words.
Yes. So, but as you know, like you've been subjected to my endless pitching, and I think it's time for yes, it's time to accelerate by doing this all in public. And of course, this is where I really love Farcaster. It's like, where else can I find a place with lots of fellow builder types who I can, share these experiments and, get really useful feedback.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. All right. I got to go again. So maybe we'll end the stream